Test. Fredrik. Så. Hallå? Är du... Ja, hallå Fredrik. Jag tror inte. Ja, hej. Du, ja, du har hittat fram hit till rummet. Jätte- Ja, ja, de sitter alla och äter lunchen här. Så jag hoppas att... Ja, jag hoppas, nu har jag två mikrofoner. Ja, förlåt, du sa någonting. Ja, absolut. Och jag har nog
A warm welcome to all of you here live at the Nordic Culture Point in Helsinki, and all of you watching also through the stream. I want firstly to thank the Nordic Culture Point for providing this space today and all the techniques. My name is Malin Gustafsson from Equalita. I'm one of the co-authors of the handbook that we are launching today. It's my pleasure to be the host. I will start to give the word to Paula Lehtomäki, the Secretary General of the Nordic Council of Ministers, and she will open the launch from Copenhagen.
Dear friends, I would like to wish you all welcome to this seminar on how to combat sexual harassment in the judiciary. On this occasion, we will also launch the handbook that the Nordic Council of Ministers has produced with the help of Equalita. The Nordic countries are global role models in terms of gender equality and equal treatment. But people living in the Nordic countries still experience sexual harassment and discrimination. This was made very clear by the testimonies from the Me Too movement. Because of these testimonies, the Nordic Ministers for Justice decided to produce the handbook that we are launching today. The handbook is aimed at the judiciary, but it can be used by all sectors of the labour market. Equal treatment is a priority on the agenda of the Nordic countries and in Nordic cooperation. This is an important part of our work to build a sustainable and integrated Nordic region. But inequality, discrimination, and sexual harassment is a global challenge. Therefore, we have translated the handbook to English so that it can be used wherever it is needed. I would like to thank you all for joining in this seminar, both physically and digitally. I'm sure the discussions will bring new knowledge and insights to the continued work against sexual harassment in the working places. Thank you.
The guest is my former colleague and my co-author, the criminologist Maria Norman, that will give a short introduction to our handbook. Welcome to take the stage, Maria.
Thank you, Malin. Yes. Welcome. It's great to have you here in the live audience and also online. I'll give you a short introduction to the contents and purpose of this handbook. And you may ask later. Yeah. So, what? This handbook presents practical approaches. I try to be fast since I have some good points coming up. It introduces the reader to sexual harassment in the Nordic judiciaries, presents practical approaches for work around sexual harassment, and offers concrete tips for preventing sexual harassment at both an individual but also the structural level. And that is something we have wanted to stress here. Why? Because, as we already heard, we haven't got rid of sexual harassment in the workplaces and not in the legal field either. So this is still needed. Probably Me Too helped to raise the issue also in the legal field of work. And we are still seeing different areas of professions or professional branches going through the process started by Me Too. The handbook is aimed at all employees in the judiciary, but can also be used as inspiration in other fields of work. So this is useful, I would say, for everyone interested in combating and dealing with sexual harassment in the workplace. Oi, what did I do? this handbook, we have gained a good opportunity to further develop and use Equalita's framework 4 steps to change, which we employ in Equalita in all our equality work. And we have tangible and clear examples, and we have paid special attention in writing this handbook to serve as well as possible the one using it, being concrete, easy to understand, and give examples. So which methods did we use? We have interviewed representatives of different judicial authorities in the Nordic countries. We have followed, of course, social media, outcomes, blogs, everything that was linked to this field of work. We have also heard researchers, trade unions. We have had law students, trade associations who have given their view. So when we started creating this handbook, we wanted to do it a bit differently from the handbooks we saw were in use in different I lose it totally. Judiciaries and unions. So we wanted to emphasize the parts of work to create a change. We wanted to address some issues we found lacking in traditional handbooks, such as how to understand a subjective definition of sexual and gender-based harassment, how perpetrators of harassment can operate, and the practical tips. And also the preventive perspective. Usually handbooks contain only information on how to deal when something already has happened. Here I highlighted in the table of contents some additions we have made that are those I'm going shortly to present, but also usually not found in traditional guidelines, handbooks, whatever they are called, that usually concentrate on dealing with sexual harassment when it has happened. Very little so in prevention or in putting responsibility at the work community as a whole. So we added perpetrators. We wanted perpetrators to understand the consequences of harassment and discrimination. And quite often when we read materials regarding sexual harassment, it's as if the perpetrator would be somehow not there. They have no saying, and it's like a natural phenomenon. It's like a wind or something. It just happens. But we want to also point out the perpetrator is an active person and can take responsibility. Then we also wanted to address bystanders, the others in the workplace, and help them with methods of calling out and to show solidarity and support. We also added appropriate preventive practices. So how to, in a long run, create a work culture and safety at the workplace that would curb the prevalence of sexual harassment or gender-based harassment in the long run. And this is based on awareness of privileges, power and norms connected to sexuality and gender. And this is also something we lack in, so to say, ordinary guidelines and handbooks. But we wanted to link this to the reasons of this phenomenon and that you can actually work on this and gain some preventive effect. So building a workplace culture where calling out is possible and techniques of calling out on excluding and limiting gender norms. We also added practical examples. Now these are probably too small for you to read, but you will find them in the book. And as we were doing the research for this handbook, and people would read the drafts with these examples, we would hear professionals in the field say that, oh my God, I didn't know, I didn't think this concerned me before I read the examples. So examples have found to be really important, and the examples are pretty upsetting, saddening, and what is striking in the examples is that we cannot in any way separate sexual harassment, gender-based harassment from other forms of oppression. They also contain example of racial slurs, gender, age and ethnicity-based discrimination and slurs. So, insights. What we maybe learned, especially from this process, was that the judiciary is no better prepared to deal with harassment and discrimination inside their organization and in the workforce than many of other professional fields are. So even though there seemed to at times in doing this handbook exist an attitude that in the legal field people know what is legal and behave accordingly, that has proved not to be true. The fear to speak out is real. Many of the examples and comments we got along the way on our work was that mainly women would say that they don't want to speak out because the career would end there. It would be like suicide in progressing to higher positions, or you would be known as someone troublesome. And this is for us, and in Equalitas experience, nothing new. This goes in all fields of work. But we were, of course, again, shocked and saddened to hear this from a field of work where we usually think that the staff or professionals know their rights, they work with rights, the law, and that they also felt the same fear as people in other fields. Also, again, this intersectional perspective on harassment, that we can't separate it from ethical and professional conduct regarding other areas of work. So this should go hand in hand with other work norms, attitudes, where we want to address discrimination. Malin is giving me this. 1/2 a second. And of course, the feeling we had along the way, as we in all Nordic countries are known to respect our courts of justice, the legal professionals very highly, was that respect or trust to be shaken a bit. So how can we trust the courts to secure fair trials if there is no capacity to handle sexual harassment or discrimination based on gender in the staff? And also the awareness of power, privileges, norms regarding gender, sexuality and intersectionality, that we really need this perspective. But the positive news is there is a lot of good stuff to be done. Thank you.
So you can find this handbook not only in English, but in Swedish, Finnish, and Icelandic. And it can be found on the web pages of Nordic Council of Ministers, norden.org. When now trying to marketing and promoting this handbook, I mean, it's free just to download for everyone. We have also produced 3 short video clips where we want to highlight different kind of discrimination that happen in this field. And there are these happens, or these like events that we that are in the video clips, are inspired by the stories that we learned during this process. So these small video clips is also both showing the situations and also giving some advices. How can we think about it? How can we deal with these issues? And I would love to thank Karma Media that was helping us out with these videos, and all the actors, and particularly the amateur actors from the Judiciary that brought us to their houses. They were there, they were looking at the scripts, they were doing it so it would be so authentic as possible and to fit to how it actually is there. So let's look at one of the videos.
The negotiations are going in our favor.
Yes, we are well prepared. Excuse me, Mrs. Ström, could you please help me double check part of this contract real quick? Yes, of course. Go ahead.
That's why we keep her around, to do all the boring admin stuff with the other girls.
No, Mrs. Ström is partner because she's an excellent lawyer.
Thank you. Lovely. I'm so happy now to have people also, like real people, not only a book and citations and videos, but actually people from the field that have been very engaged in this in different kind of ways. So it's my big pleasure. I can introduce you one at a time. First, I want to have Åsa Erlandsson that is partner and lawyer in Zettervalls. And Åsa is one of Sweden's most experienced lawyers in labor law, I would say. And she have also been active in this Me Too movement from Sweden, from the unions where she is also in the boards. So welcome up to the stage.
Thank you.
And I'm also happy to have Karen Margaret Kjeby here today from Denmark. You are also partner and SW Law in Danske Advokater as well, and you are also known in Denmark for leading bigger law cases and also like about sexual harassment, lately also with Danish Journalist League, but also being self-critical and have looked into your own field, so to say. So please take the space as well. And I also have online, I'm always pleased to meet Fredrik Bodenstam, the director of the Swedish Secretariat of Gender Research at the University of Gothenburg. Fredrik has a long experience of conducting research on sexual harassment, particularly in academia, but Fredrik also knows like the Nordic perspective very well. So I'm very happy to have you here as well. And last but not least, you already met my former colleague Maria Norman, the criminologist and the co-author to the handbook that will also take part in this discussion. So welcome. I'm thinking, is it okay that should I stay here or stand here? Because now I can have Fredrik here on the side, so to say. First of all, I think I start with you, Åsa. We were reflecting also that should we actually start to define what is sexual harassment? Well, do we all know about it? I mean, this all happens like Tarana Burke was 2006, talking about like Me Too. I have experienced, she was actually bringing these issues up, but it was not before 2017 when Alisa Milano's tweet somehow kicked off this movement of Me Too. Do we still need to define, Åsa, what is sexual harassment? I mean, 2006, 2016, 17 and now it's 2022?
Well, I think that's a great question because to a certain extent I think it's good that we define it because we need to know what we're talking about. If it becomes too subjective, it will not be real, so to speak. And another good thing with having a definition is that these things are sensitive. People can get offended when you speak about it, and then it's good to be a lawyer sometimes to say, look, it's not me, I'm not making this up. There's a law saying that this is illegal or you cannot do it this way. So if the question is, do we need it or not, I can definitely see positive things with having a definition. But I think we are also all a little bit afraid of making this a question of defining things because, and that's the good thing, by the way, with at least the Swedish definition, it is up to me. And I define what is sexual harassment. And that means that this is a very, very broad concept. So yes, good with the definition as long as it is wide and it's up to the individual to actually define what it is.
Do any one of the other ones in the panel want to reflect or continue on Åsa, or do you find that no, this is enough?
Yeah, the only thing I would like to add is that if you make a definition, and I quite agree with you also that we need a definition, you need to use words that everybody understands. So the examples that is in the book shows that you cannot be too academic about this. You have to use everyday words that everybody understands in order for them to understand that everyday situations can become sexual harassment situations. So you need definitions, but you have to take away your legal code, so to speak, open it a little bit in order for everybody to understand it. So, but otherwise, I quite agree with you. Mm-hmm.
I would like for everyday life, we don't need to think about sexual harassment always from a legal field, but we need definitions that work for everyday life to say what is okay, what is not okay. And now adding the subjective part to the definition is important. I think that is what serves us most in everyday life, that you actually have to decide for yourself where does your boundaries go. So I think quite often when we talk about definitions, we take this very like law perspective. Will this hold in law? Could we go to court with this case or this definition? But most of the cases of sexual harassment can be solved in a workplace, in a discussion or encounter, and doesn't have to be dealt with in a legal way.
That's quite true. One of the things that we found out doing our research in Denmark, in Danish advocates, was actually that the parties involved, or the offended person, pardon my French here, doesn't always want something very big to happen. The person just wants this situation to be dealt with, to go away, to have my own space around me, to be respected for his or her or whatever person we are talking about, their person as such. And I was very surprised when we heard that. We did research in Denmark, in Danske Advokater, which involved all groups, representatives of all groups of persons in a law firm, like the service assistant, the paralegal, the secretary, everybody. And even the persons representing the groups that was most often the subject of harassment, any kind of harassment, they said, our interest group, they don't want to make this a big thing. They don't want to have somebody fired. They just want this to go away. So I quite agree with you in that perspective as well, that you should step back from the legal definition in order not to, make it too difficult for the discussion to go on. But then you can take on the legal discussion if you have to go to court then, of course.
Thank you. I was thinking, like, one of my questions, I can start now with Fredrik and give him also the space. It's always like having someone like a bit hybrid. I would like to know we want you to reflect a bit. What have happened since the Me Too movement started? I think also that in the Nordics we have had different pace, fast, slow. When we started, what have happened? What have been the things that have been? And if I give first the floor to you, Fredrik, what would you say? What have happened until today? What are the changes that we have seen? And then I want you in the end to discuss like what do we want to see still. But if we reflect now a bit, reflect back, positive things, for example.
So thank you, and I hope you can hear me. I'm sorry for not being in place today in Helsinki. And I just want to agree also that the question of definitions is so important, because we can never capture the experiences of assault and abuse through definitions. So we need to have this practical, experience-based, research-based knowledge on harassment, tackling these issues. And the legal definition is on the other side, kind of. But anyway, your question is important on the reception of Me Too. I would say in the Nordic countries, it's been a major issue, but it differs between the countries. And we at NIC has also produced an interesting report on this aspect that you may read if you like, on the different reception of Me Too in the Nordic countries. But I would like to stress what has happened also in the outside of the Nordic countries, really, because I can see that in many of the European countries, the Me Too movement has not been as strong as in the Nordic countries. And the same goes for many other parts of the world, really. So I think we should really be grateful to all those women and people from different minority groups that actually stood up and spoke up on their experiences in such a brave and broad manner, really setting the target on how we need to combat sexual harassment, but also other forms of abuse and sexual violence. So on my part, I would say we have the best opportunities still to capture the experiences and knowledges from the Me Too movement in the Nordic countries for preventive work. So I think this is really important for us to address and realize.
Karin, Margareta, what do you think? What have happened? You're sitting with this.
Yeah, what had happened? Well, in Denmark, I think we had a long period of denial within the judiciary. Maybe because of what you said before, Maria. We are the people knowing the law, so we were not supposed to, or rather we were supposed to not act against the law. But after coming out of that period of denial, we realized during our research that a lot of the law firms didn't have the understanding of what sexual harassment actually was or how it could occur. And then the next thing was they didn't have the right tools how to handle a situation. If a situation occurred within a law firm, they would immediately go into the setting of solving a legal case for a client. Now the client was themselves, but they were taking their own medicine, so to speak. And we found out that this is not the right way to deal with this. You might not know the law, but this is not only about the law. It's about a lot of other things. So the next thing that happened was that Danish advocates launched a working group where we took up these issues, and actually we made a toolbox for the law firms that they can download, or rather they can take out the things that they want to use. And we realized you cannot make one size fits all, because law firms in Denmark, they go from one lawyer and one secretary to 400 lawyers and 3 secretaries. So we put in the toolbox, we put different tools, big wrenches, small wrenches, so that they can use them as they want to. And then we also launched meetings in the Danish advocates where we could speak about this. And we didn't only invite the partners of the companies, we also invited the employees of the companies coming and listening to all of us, making it transparent that it was legal to talk about this, and we wanted to talk about this. Because if you just put something in a toolbox and the HR partner takes it out and you don't speak about it, then it doesn't really sink in and it doesn't become a tool within the company. So we hope that this has worked or will work in the future. Not that we're finished, it's an ongoing process and we put more tools in every day. But I think from being in denial, we have come a long way.
Yeah, sounds great. Åsa, how would you describe from a Swedish perspective, but also like your own work?
Yeah, well, I work at a law firm, so I will use that perspective, not the overall Swedish perspective. So you've only had a short period. We've had a few years extra as we started off early. Unfortunately, what's the good thing? Well, no one can deny, they shouldn't be able to deny that this happens, that sexual harassment at the workplace happens. And it's not only a few individuals, it's a big collective. It really is a thing. I think that's the large thing that happened with Me Too in Sweden and also in the law firms. We also started off trying to find tools, trying to help. I'm also a member of the board at the Swedish Bar Association, and we've tried, you should have policies, you should implement the law where it says that you should work actively with these things to make sure that you take away all risks for harassment. But, and this is where I have hopes for the future, but I cannot see too much yet, it doesn't really help all the way. A good starting point is that we are aware that we have a problem. We have also been given some tools, but we have a long way to go still. But the good thing is that we know that this happens, so we cannot deny it anymore.
What do you think, Åsa, is the obstacles?
I think it's power to a big extent. And again, I'm speaking from the law firm perspective. The people who have power, they will be the ones that can change this. And they need to be on board. They need to want to make this change happen. Unfortunately, at least in the Swedish business law firms, we have a very unequal. It's not a good mix of men and women, and it's not a good mix of ages, and it's not a good mix, actually, to be quite honest, of anything. It's a very homogen, I don't know the English word for it, group who has the power. And as long as they don't want to change, and we all know that change is a little bit scary because it can mean that you need to give up something. And as long as we don't get that, I think that's the obstacle. You asked me what is the largest obstacle, and I think that's the thing that. So let's say that, we need to be more different than only men and women, but if we could only be at least more split men and women, we could have a more equal split there. I think that would be a great change to start with, for example.
Thank you. Maria, when we were writing on the handbook, what do you think that, did we think about this power and like privileges and this uncomfortability, or you were a bit in your introduction, do you want to open up a bit what we were thinking of, like what is needed?
The power, in Equalitas work, the power and norms is central. So of course the power is there, and I think our approach was both like law firms and like courts of law and staff also that had no education or background in law. So quite a large group, and there the power dynamics change intersectionally in many settings. We have, for example, people working with cleaning or secretaries, judges. So, and then added as layers, gender identities, sexuality, skin tone, race, language groups. So power was very much there, and I started thinking now about to get on board people. What we traditionally have done is to somehow reach out for the justice, to say this is we need justice and we need to be fair. It's not fair to harass, it's not fair to discriminate. And it hasn't worked. People who need to give away their power or to use their power for common good or someone else's good than themselves haven't listened on that ear. So I think that's still something we need to work on. What we try to grasp this in different ways, like saying that your workforce will stay with you if you treat them well, you will get to keep good employees, you will have better results, better money, whatever, a range of stuff. But still, I think what we need, these are okay to relate to and to use as arguments to at least get a start, but would be also the insight that those who have power need to become aware of it, even though it's not fun. And I think everyone can find a situation in their own life where they have power. As a white woman, I have much more power than many other women. As a middle-aged, with a fairly heterosexual life, I again have a lot of power. So we all need to understand where we have power and not be ashamed of it or think it's somehow uncomfortable to think about, but to think, what can I do having this power? It's fantastic. And somehow to relate to that, what human beings want to do is a change for something good and have an impact. And that gives different kinds of opportunities than, for example, shame of not having done anything before.
That's a great approach, like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Could I just add something that I just
please.
came to think about when you were talking about power? In my opinion, one of the things that really is a problem with lawyers, law firms, is that you are used to not only having power, you are used to being in control. The power gives you control. And suddenly, if you are in a situation where you have to moderate a conflict between colleagues due to sexual harassment, or you are accused yourself of harassing, you lose control. And therefore you think you lose power. And one of the things that we actually are trying to do, or suggesting in our handbook in Denmark, is that instead of trying to be in control of this situation yourself, take in somebody else who has more knowledge in dealing with situation, and give away a little of your power in that sense, that you take somebody in who can do things in another way than you do. And that's a big problem, because you want to solve your own problems as a lawyer. So first of all, telling somebody that I cannot solve this problem myself, admitting to that, that's elusive control that no lawyer wants to go into.
That's a great point.
But you have to do that sometimes. So that's another thing about power and control. You have to explain to the older generation that being a lawyer is not always being in control, because it is a generational problem, I think. Okay. I hope we're going to see.
I hope you're right.
Well, I still teach my students that also being a man is a gender, for example. So we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to issues regarding sexuality, gender, diversity.
Yes.
So I wouldn't put too much hope on the future generation to solve it themselves, because as we know from other fields of work like the police, military, or security work, is that when you go into a field, you have to adapt, because otherwise you become a problem, your career will stop there. And also, of course, the role models. So if we have good young people coming in, of course, they will have it will have an impact on the work culture you have from before. So if those old, so to say old, you can be mentally old at a very young
dinosaurs.
If the young or old dinosaurs don't support your way of being different, you're on your own and you have no chance to do a difference. Fredrik, do you want to say something?
I can see Fredrik all the time, but you cannot, so I want to include Fredrik here.
I'm listening carefully to what you're saying, and I just want to say I completely agree on the issues on power and control. They're quite interesting and important to address, right? But then on the other side, you also have the need for learning to listen to experiences of violence and abuse. That's also knowledge that you need to appreciate and learn how to listen to this, because one of the main experiences is that those having experiences of abuse and harassment, they're not listened to, they're not understood, and they are often blamed for the situation they're in. So I think this is also part of the power control issue that you're discussing. I think is quite important. And then if I may, just add another reflection on the preventive, structures and work. That the handbook is to the point, as it combines research-based knowledge with experiences and targeting the structural level. But I would also add that we have so much research-based knowledge on what is not working preventive, and I think you're on it in this discussion, and that is policies, case management systems, or trainings, individual trainings. They are not fruitful if you want to combat harassment in the workplace. They are important parts of a policy framework, but they're not enough, and we have quite strong evidence on that in many sectors today. So I think this is one of the major challenges, not just waiting for the next generation. We also have to, organize a sustainable preventive framework within not just the legal part of, the work sector, all parts. So I think this is something that we maybe turn back to in this discussion. But I'm really into that, the way the handbook is trying to promote another, view and set of thinking through the preventive challenges that we are heading right now.
I love the handbook. I didn't read it until yesterday, unfortunately, but at once I thought this is useful, really useful, and I'm going to spread it out first at my law firm, because it is a great tool. It's very good.
Yeah, and I think that we also, through the handbook, as we have worked for such a long time, me, myself, maybe almost like 20 years, me and Maria met, and now we have met again during the studies also, and trying to think that already at that time we were having like sexual harassment at the university, and we were like, okay, how to address this? And I also felt like when the Me Too was kicking in hard, I was just like, shit, no, something is happening. Because firstly, I think that what have been missing in all kind of change work when it comes to discrimination is the lack of insight that this is structural. And with these massive like witnesses, people could not say anymore there are some assholes. People just had to maybe...
Very effective assholes.
yeah. All over the place. So I think that was the first. And then what I see is like all these like norms around gender, sexuality, ethnicity, languages, like how do we get there? And we have also like work in schools, so I think that's sometimes also really good to work like with younger people, because then you can just talk, blah, blah, blah. You have to be super concrete, and that they are also challenging you. Like, how do we actually create a change? Why would they do it? And what is the problem? What is actually the problem? So we also have this like trainings of like take the power back. And it's about how can they take it back from the norm structures that they're acting to like, and then they become as the dinosaurs in the end if they don't break it. But we need everyone to change somehow.
It's not only the dinosaurs. It's so easy to think about the dinosaurs and these some really effective and bad perpetrators, and then we don't need to think about the structure. That our structure stinks. The attitudes on a general level in the society stinks about so many things. So we quite often when we combat any kind of violence that we have classically linked to women, it's more like individual cases, because then we don't need to see structure, we don't need to see dynamics, we don't need to see how it's built in a system of not being heard, as Fredrik was referring to, that we don't listen, we don't acknowledge, we don't see, and to say that it was someone really bad or one person did like a real whole or
one perpetrator.
Yes. So and also what we were talking a lot about both during this work and other work is that we also need to leave the setting of men and women as men in being the perpetrators automatically and women being the victims. And that's why we added gender, sexuality and these other norms coming in. And as women, we need to see that we are a part of this, that we could, in a blink of an eye, we are in the role of a perpetrator, which we will see even more clearly when it's about fields of work where the gender division in the workforce is very clearly, for example, female and a few men. So we need to rethink a lot of things and see also our own responsibilities as the potential perpetrators and bystanders. And I had probably a lot of other points as well, but please.
Yeah, now we are already in this, that do we need to do? What is next step? I mean, Denmark, you are like trying the tools out.
Yeah.
Do you want Karen Margaret to continue?
I was very happy to read the handbook as well, because it's sort of, I could tick off everything that we had done in our handbook in Denmark and say, okay, we did good here. So no, never mind. What we are, I think we're going to do in Denmark is to try to act cultural-wise. You shouldn't think about acting right, not harassing. It should just be a part of your way of being. So I think that's where we're going to, that's our high aim, you know. It's, don't think about it, just do it. And I think we're going to act upon it at a very low level. For instance, in university. Go into university and say, not that we have a subject on this matter, but teaching other subjects. You could sort of drag it into the equal rights perspective. EU law, when you teach EU law, why should it always be on competition and free movement of goods? You could easily speak about the free movement of persons and labor and the equal rights and the charter. So there's a lot of things that you could do at a low level in the judiciary. Of course, you could do it in all subjects as well. And then I think we also are going to train the young lawyers, the young assistant lawyers. They have to do 9 days of courses during the 3 years that they are lawyers, trainees. And I think we're going to ask the Law Society to make it a subject on these courses as well, equal rights somehow. And also implement it in what they are learning about how to run a business. So we're going to do it from the bottom and up. And that's why, Fredrik, I'm hoping that the next generation will have a lot more on the roads that a lot more strength to go the roads that I have paved for them or laid down the tracks. Because otherwise, I quite agree, you cannot do it just by training others. And then, of course, I think we have to, as a part of this cultural discussion as well, we have to have another language about it. We have to not see ourselves as women and victims and men as perpetrators and things like that. We have to find other words to talk about that as well. And that's one of the things that we're working with as well. And it's an ongoing work. Actually, we're going to... I just read an article coming over here this morning that there was a partner in a British law firm who had been fined a 400 kroner fine because he had been sexual harassing some of the employees. I don't know if you saw it. No, I just saw the headlines. And we are going to ask the Danish Bar Association to make it a part of the ethics to comply with equal treatment in all ways, so that you can be fined by the Law Society if you don't treat other people equally. And I think the English Bar Association has gone down that road.
We have so much to learn from each other. We have already done that in Sweden.
You have already done that,
the Swedish
okay.
Bar Association, right after the Me Too movement, we also looked at what can we do, and we thought it was already in our bar ethical rules that you must comply with the law generally, including law on sexual harassment, for example. But just to be clear, the board made a specific statement saying that this is also an important part, etc. So, we have a lot of knowledge in between us in the Nordic countries, obviously, that we don't know about. So we have to share our knowledge, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
I think also we wrote in the handbook that in Norway they have also worked with education at university, because they also saw, okay, here we have to go here as well. Yeah. So probably good to check out what the Norwegians are doing. Yeah. Fredrik, do you have something to add about what is needed for the future before we end this panel today?
Just a short reflection on language use, I think. I mean, looking into other contexts, I can see that, for example, in the US context, the concept of rape culture is well developed and has been on the scene for many, many decades as a kind of context, the idea of discrimination and sexual harassment. And in the UK, you have a lad culture as a concept. I think we're still struggling to find a common platform to speak up on sexual harassment in the Nordic countries that is connecting actually the broader framework of gender-based violence that we see and know of. But we're still talking as if they are separate. And I can see in the handbook that you're actually connecting sexual violence with sexual harassment in a quite fruitful way. And I think that could be enhanced to a larger degree. And we need to take in the whole view of abuse and violence that confronts women, minorities mainly. So I'm still, searching for that kind of common language and platform in the Nordic countries. We tend to end up in sexual harassment as a concept, and we agree upon it's not enough, right? So we still have a long way to go to actually incorporate all the different forms of violence abuse also when we speak up in the Nordic countries. That would be one reflection on my part.
We are running out of time. We can, as always, but I think we have a good start here, and also we have had the possibility to listen to different kind of perspectives and continue this collaboration between the countries, and the after party. We can still discuss, but for you here and for you live, we will start to finish the program. As Paula Lehtomäki already mentioned in the opening of the seminar, the handbook was an initiative from Finland, and therefore we also invited the Minister of Justice, Anna-Maja Henriksson, and our Minister of Nordic Cooperation and Equality, Thomas Blomqvist, that we would like to hear that, okay, but how are we actually working on a higher level? So now we will have perspectives from Finland. So, because I think all perspectives are needed. So thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So let's our ministers talk.
Dear audience, sexual harassment is a serious human rights problem that affects too many of us in professional life. No one should experience sexually offensive behavior by colleagues or others at work. And no one should have to be afraid to go to work because of this. We must not assume that any area of working life is immune to this problem. Unfortunately, this sometimes concerns even the judiciary. Comprehensive measures are necessary to ensure that our legal professionals have a safe and respectful working environment. This subject is important to me, both politically and socially, and I'm glad to be able to talk about it to you today. I'm pleased to say that the current government pays particular attention to sexual autonomy and integrity and the reduction of crimes against these core values. The government has launched several legislative and other projects aimed at improving the status of crime victims, addressing sexual violence, and increasing equality. One of the biggest and historically most important legislative projects of this government is the comprehensive reform of legislation covering sexual offences. This reform will reinforce the right to physical integrity and to sexual self-determination. The major advancement is that the definition of rape will be based on the absence of consent. Here Finland will soon join those Nordic and other countries that have already modernized their relevant legislation. This reform is now in its final stages. A very important part of this package is the reinforcement of the criminal law on sexual harassment. It will cover all types of sexual harassment, including verbal abuse and unwanted delivery of sexually offensive images. In addition to bring justice to the victims, this amendment of our criminal law will make it clear that there is less and less tolerance for any kind of sexual harassment in our society. However, criminal law measures are never sufficient to address problems in society, and they should be only used as the last resort. We also need actions that address the problems more comprehensively. In working life, it is essential to have clear guidelines that will help to recognize, interfere, resolve, and ultimately prevent cases of sexual harassment in workplaces. And I'm glad to note that the new Handbook of Combating Sexual Harassment in Judiciary, published today, will do precisely this. I warmly welcome this handbook and would like to express my sincere gratitude to those who have participated and supported in creating it. This handbook is an important contribution in ensuring safe and more equal working environment in our judiciary and beyond. Thank you.
Dear friends, thank you for the invitation to this very important event. Sexual harassment is not a new phenomenon, but the awareness and debate surrounding it have grown significantly in recent years. One important factor has been the international Me Too movement. Social media has provided an effective platform through which experiences of harassment can be shared. This way, it has helped to demonstrate the extent of sexual harassment. In Finland, too, we have been able to follow reports on harassment in various areas of society, for instance, in the field of sports, arts, and music. However, it's important to remember that sexual harassment is not limited to any specific sector. It is a wide-ranging problem in working life, schools, and free time activities. It is also a clear obstacle to achieving gender equality. It's most often women, particularly young women, that experience sexual harassment, and it affects their lives in many ways. As the Minister for Equality, I'm committed to combating sexual harassment. For my part, I have initiated roundtable discussions on sexual harassment with different stakeholders and experts. The first roundtable discussions were held last year, and they will continue this spring. Our goal is to identify recommendations to continue the work on this issue. Long-term work is needed to eliminate sexual harassment. We need to dismantle the gendered structures of working life and society. Sexual harassment is also based on our perceptions of gender roles and power. These aspects need to be included in the debate. There is also a need to clarify the practices related to dealing with sexual harassment in different situations. The threshold for reporting and accessing support always needs to be as low as possible. It's important that everyone, the victims and the witnesses of harassment, as well as those in leadership positions within an organization, have sufficient information on how to respond in such situations. I also want to address the role of witnesses to sexual harassment. It's important that no one is left alone and that bystanders intervene and provide support. Here, I especially think that we men can take a more active role in being part of the solution. in intervening and addressing harassment when we witness it. To conclude, sexual harassment has been and remains to be an all too widespread phenomenon in all parts of society. It's a question of personal integrity and safety. It is a question of gender equality and human rights. We need to continue our work on combating this issue, including identifying concrete measures. This is exactly what you have done with this handbook. This will provide important insight and input on how to move forward. Thank you so much for your important work and for launching this handbook. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, you here live and also you on the stream. We are coming to the end. I also want to, in this Nordic context, want to tell you that tomorrow on the 19th of March in Finland we are celebrating the Gender Equality Day in memory of the writer and social activist Minna Canth that was born on that day 1844. Fearlessly she expressed her views and highlighted social ills and conveyed new ideas that shocked the traditional worldview at that time. I think that she would have been one of the influencers in the Me Too movement if she would live today. That's why we wanted also to have this launch today, to be inspired of the past, but also for the future that I sit here, both in the stream and here among us. I hope you can bring something fruitful with you, and I have learned a lot as well. And I wish you all a lovely spring, and we continue this together over the borders, be in contact with each other, look what other countries, other organizations have done. I think then we can come closer to the solution. Thank you.